Welcome back to another FPL video. There's such a quick turnaround. We've got another deadline tomorrow, so this will be the GW19 team selection, and let's make it clear, it's a double game week for the likes of Chelsea and Fulham. I'll be talking about my transfer plans, which also includes the likes of Game Week 20 and beyond, and some different possibilities for my team, as well as providing a recap on the vast majority of my players and how I did in Game Week 18. So if you end up enjoying this video, then be sure to drop it a like. Let's try to get this to over 300, and we're also looking to push on towards 20,000 subscribers in 2023. So thank you very much to everyone who supported the channel. I wish you a happy new year. I hope you enjoyed the Christmas and festive period, and let's get straight into this video. This section of the video will be very brief because Kepa is the only player at the time of this recording who hasn't played yet. Chelsea will play Nottingham Forest. That's the only game that hasn't been covered. Every other game has happened up until when I'm recording this and set everything up, and Kepa will face Nottingham Forest. Let's see how they do, and I'm happy to have him for the double game week, despite the fact that I'm not that confident of a clean sheet against either Fulham or Man City. But having said that, I could still bring in another Chelsea player or two, which we'll talk about in the transfer section of this video. The biggest takeaway and surprise of my team in Game Week 18 was Pep Guardiola doing me a favour. He didn't bring on Joao Cancelo when City were drawing to Everton 1-1, and that enabled me to get Sven Botman off my bench. He was first there. He came straight on for a 6-pointer after a clean sheet against Leeds, but Newcastle didn't win that game. Having said that, I'm still very happy because I have two of their defensive assets, of course. Almiron we'll talk about later on, but I'm very happy with the points I got off Botman. I wanted to put him into my starting 11, but I was unsure about who I would bench. It was between the likes of Trossard. I was even considering Joao Cancelo because, as I talked about in the deadline stream, my prediction was that Foden and Cancelo wouldn't start, but I still wasn't entirely sure, especially in the case of Joao Cancelo. So I started him just in case he actually started the game because I thought he could get a 6 or 12 pointer in that. In the end, it all turned out pretty well, and Sven Botman came on. In terms of my other defenders, though, I mean, Luke Shaw in this new role as a centre-back, that's 2 clean sheets now, and also multiple bonus points in both games. He got 2 against Nottingham Forest and now 3 in the last game against Wolves. So he's doing an exceptional job there. And as a fantasy asset, the fact that he's playing in a deeper position, having more defensive responsibilities, it hasn't deterred him, and he's still accumulating those points. And he's one of the very best defenders in the game right now. So I'm happy with Luke Shaw, and I can't ask for much more, really. The final defender, of course, is Kieran Trippier. He got a yellow card. Well, no problem. He's still picked up 2 bonus points, and he's done this multiple times this season, even when he's picked up a yellow card. He has been fantastic. We don't need to talk about Trippier anymore, and you're not going to gain too much because the vast majority of people have him. So the way you can gain something from Newcastle defensively is by going for a Nick Pope in goal or Sven Botman to have a double up in Newcastle defensively. It was a very low scoring week compared to the last one, for example, and a big reason why is because so many of these premium players blanked, such as Salah, Kevin De Bruyne, Harry Kane, and I was very surprised considering the fixtures that all of these players had. I thought all of them could deliver, and it was really difficult ranking all of them, you know, between 2nd and 4th in terms of the best captains for Game Week 18. In the end, they all blanked, so it made no difference whatsoever. All of them were 2-pointers, and I was very surprised with that. It was Darwin Núñez and Trent with the assists for the 2 ridiculous own goals that Leicester scored to give Liverpool the victory. And I'm still expecting big things from Salah, and I think it's very close between him and De Bruyne, and I'm not going to make that change just yet. Maybe in Game Week 20 in time for the City double, but right now I'm happy to keep Salah, and I even might have him until the end of the season depending on how things go and if I have other fires to put out and what other doubles and blanks happen later in the season. But that was Salah, not really too happy with that. And even more so with Trossard, a 1-pointer. He came off just before the 60th minute mark. He did absolutely nothing against Arsenal, and Brighton looked more dangerous when Brighton made those substitutions, and Mitoma was the biggest threat there. And Leandro Trossard typically does well against the big teams, but he didn't do it this time, and he is someone I'm looking to sell, actually. I think he's a good option still. He could provide some returns when we sell him, but I think in the long run there are better options. You look at Martin Odegaard, who's even cheaper as well, playing in a better team. I would rather go there, and we're not getting that double or triple game week for Brighton as it looked like it was going to happen maybe a few weeks ago. So that was a very big kind of dent in Trossard's FPL prospects, and he's probably going to be sold very soon. And then Rashford, he was benched because of disciplinary reasons. He overslept. But it doesn't matter. He still came on, scored, and probably was very unlucky not to have his second goal being allowed, because you could argue it should have stood. In the end, though, Rashford is a great FPL option at the moment. He's in great form for both club and country, and he's another one that is going to continue to rise in price. United could have a double in Game Week 20. It could be the fixture against Leeds that slots into there, and that makes Rashford even more appealing. And I think Shaw, Rashford, and Dalot, when he comes back and he's fit, I think those those are the best free options for United. Martial's also decent up front, but to cover United offensively, it has to be Rashford at this point. Bruno Fernandes isn't the same player from an FPL perspective, and Martial is very inconsistent and injury prone. So we've got a standout option there from United, and United themselves have only lost one game of the last 15, and they're looking even better every single game under Ten Hag. So Rashford is a great choice at that price. And then looking at the other two midfielders, Martinelli with no bonus points, but still got a goal, an assist, and also did a great job throughout the game. And he was maybe a bit fortunate because the assist came from Robert Sanchez kind of fumbling it, but it was a powerful shot, and also his finish went straight at Sanchez and yet still went in. But Martinelli is a great option. I still think he'll score more goals than Odegaard, and maybe in terms of points it'll be very close, but at the moment you have to say Odegaard is the man. And it was an unbelievable performance, some exceptional passes, one to Martinelli, well actually both of them to be fair. Martinelli missed one but also converted the other one to make it 4, and I just have to say you could even go for both of them. Despite Arsenal facing the likes of Newcastle, Man United and Spurs very soon, you could go for Martinelli and Odegaard. And let's not forget Saka, who's on penalties. He scored the crucial opening goal and he's another great option. Arsenal, you could even triple up on them offensively, but I would probably go for a double up offensively and go for one defender in Ben White, despite the fact that he was taken off just before the 60th minute mark and didn't get that clean sheet, which was so close to obtaining. The last midfielder in this list was probably a big surprise to see him blank. It was Almiron against Leeds, but he's still a great option. I would actually expect him to cause Arsenal a lot of problems, and he is still, for me, probably a season keeper if he can still get goals from time to time, because at his price and below, I don't see anyone else doing anything like he's doing. Even Xhaka, Billing, Tavernier, whoever you can name who's been doing well around 5.8 million and below, I don't think any of them come close to Almiron in terms of goals and assists. I think what sums up this week best is Harry Kane blanking against Aston Villa at home and Spurs not scoring a single goal. Unai Emery teams aren't known for being resolute defensively. Yeah, they kept a clean sheet away to a top 6 club. And Spurs, they typically still score goals. They come back into games. But as I said, weeks ago and even after the Brentford game, yeah, it's impressive to be 2-0 down and then bring it back to 2-2, get a draw, and sometimes even win the game. But you can't keep doing this. And that's now 7 games in a row in the Premier League where Spurs have gone down first and they've conceded the first goal. And they've also conceded 2 goals in the last 7 games as well. It's absolutely unbelievable. In all competitions, this goes to the last 10 and 11. It's just unbelievable, and Spurs need to fix things up. They've got the North London derby soon where I think they will turn up, and they also need Kulusevski fit. I think him missing out was already a big blow, and Spurs fans were already pessimistic about their prospects today against Aston Villa. And Harry Kane is still a good option. He's the only one I would consider from Spurs, but he's also very expensive, and you might not captain him that often, especially if Spurs can put out performances like that where they offer absolutely nothing against Aston Villa. Well, that makes Harry Kane a less appealing option, and we might look elsewhere. But I'm still happy with him for the time being. He obviously scored against Brentford and was close to getting a second, and I think he can do well against City, Arsenal, and all the other games coming up. But Spurs need to get their act together, otherwise they're in big trouble, and Champions League qualification could be a distant memory. And Haaland is the last player. He got a 6-pointer. He got a yellow card, but still picked up a bonus point. And Everton managed to get back in the game for Damari Gray. Won the goal really, but Man City dominated. They didn't really convert that second, and on another day they probably would have won by a comfortable margin. After the way Man City played against Leeds, I had to captain Haaland. The chances they created, they should have scored 4 or 5 at least. Haaland himself could have scored a hat-trick on that day, and he scored again against Everton. The other premium options blanked. I was mainly considering Harry Kane as a different captaincy option, if not Salah. They both blanked, so I made the right decision there. I don't think I would have captained the likes of Luke Shaw and the other highest scoring players in my team, like Martinelli, who I even considered to bench, but with the form Arsenal were in, I just couldn't bring myself to do that. But I've got 52 points so far. Kepa's the only player left for me at the time of this recording, and I've got 1,054 points overall, and my overall rank is now 516,000, and that could go up yet again if Chelsea keep a clean sheet. And remember, just before Game Week 17 and the resumption of the Premier League after the World Cup, I was around 1.1 million, so I've essentially halved my rank, and I'm looking in a good position right now compared to how I was a month ago. So I'm hoping for more, and I think I can get some more green arrows with this team, and also with some of my transfers that are planned for the double game week, and also looking beyond. So let's talk about my Game Week 19 team selection, and also who are the best players for this double game week. There are no doubts this week in terms of my goalkeeper. Kepa Arrizabalaga has a double. It is against Man City and Fulham, where I don't really expect a clean sheet. If there were to be one, it probably would be the Fulham game, but even then, I wouldn't be that confident. Having said that, Kepa's in here, and even if he doesn't keep the clean sheets, he can get a few saves, or maybe even bonus points potentially, depending on how the game goes and pans out. But I think Kepa could get me at least 5 points, and I'd be quite happy with that, to be fair, across 2 games. I haven't recommended United defenders really all season, but at the moment, the likes of Luke Shaw, maybe Dallo when he comes back, are looking like great options. And Shaw in this new centre-back position, he's looking fantastic. I wouldn't expect this to last. Lisandro Martinez will come back into the side and partner Varane. And then you've got Luke Shaw on the left, where you might expect some more attacking returns, but maybe the bonus points potential will actually diminish a little bit, oddly enough. But that fixture against Bournemouth, I would expect a clean sheet there for United, and I think they can score 2 or 3 goals, maybe even more. But I think what lets United down is their finishing, so maybe a 2 or 3-0 win is on the cards, and Luke Shaw could once again get a 6 to 9 pointer, and I would be extremely happy with that return once again. He's been fantastic since the restart. Next up is Cucurella. He could be coming into my side for Joao Cancelo, and the main reason for that is to fund 2 other moves, and I could also move between defenders. So after in a few weeks, I could get rid of Cucurella because I don't really like him beyond Game Week 19, and like I said, I don't really expect a clean sheet here, so it's just a matter of accumulating appearance points, maybe getting 4 points, maybe an assist or something, which I actually wouldn't really be expecting from Cucurella and the way he's playing. But a bonus point, if Chelsea were to keep a clean sheet, that would be fantastic and a big return for me. But I'm actually also considering, if Cancelo is benched once again against Chelsea, to go for a Kanji in time for the double for Manchester City in Game Week 20. Or I will show you another kind of set of transfers where I make one only and I roll the other transfer and keep Cancelo, who I would bench in the end. So that's something I've got to think about. But if I were to bring in a defender, I would probably consider Cucurella, despite the fact that I don't really rate Chelsea defensively or the fixtures in the double. But let's wait and see, of course. And the final defender is, of course, Kieran Trippier. He is facing Arsenal, the top team in the league right now, but Trippier is probably the best defender in the game over the last year. In 2022, he was the best, and this season, there are no doubts about that. The gap between him and Saliba and the rest of the defenders is frightening. I think there's over a 30-point difference, and that just goes to show that he's essential. And I don't really use that word very often, but I think Trippier actually is the real deal. This might sound a bit crazy, but I think Marcus Rashford is one of the very best captaincy options this week. He would be in my top 5. I know the double game week players will be the standouts and Erling Haaland, but I think if you want to go a bit different, Marcus Rashford could fit the bill. I think United will score 2 or 3, like I said, maybe even keep a clean sheet, and I think Rashford could easily be on for another double-digit return like he did against Nottingham Forest. So it's something to consider. I'm not saying you have to do it or that I think he's the best, but I think he's right up there in the conversation, and I am thinking about it myself, and we'll talk about this very soon. Next up is Salah away to Brentford. I know Brentford have been impressive recently. They beat City before the World Cup began. They drew to Spurs and they probably should have won that game. And they also beat West Ham 2-0 away. But I think that it could be a high-scoring game. The last time these two teams met in that stadium, it was a 3-3 draw between Liverpool and Brentford. So I think Salah could be in for another big return here. I wouldn't expect too much really when I'm looking at it. How many points do I think Salah will get? Maybe 7, and I'd be quite happy with that. And let's see how that game goes. But it should be a really good game to watch, and it's going to be the first game of Game Week 19, and we're going to be doing the deadline stream. We could be covering the lineups as well, so be sure to tune in for that when the time comes, and I think that could be a great game to watch. Next up is Andreas Pereira, who could be coming in for me with a double game week, and in future weeks he'll be on the bench. He is really just there to facilitate another move up front, and that's why I've gone for the likes of Andreas and Cucurella, and beyond that I'm not really going to play him too often. But Andreas is good cover. He almost got that goal, which in the end turned out to be a James Ward-Prowse own goal in Fulham's 2-1 win over Southampton. But Fulham are 7th in the league. They're really good offensively, and the likes of Andreas and Mitrovic, they're the best ways to cover them. And you've also got Cordova-Reid, so Fulham suddenly have quite a few options. I wouldn't go for the defenders or burn Leno personally, but I think Andreas and Mitrovic is the way to cover Fulham, and they're looking really good. They could even push for even more. And the last midfielder is Martinelli, who's going to be facing Newcastle at home. That will be very difficult, and I've also got a bit of a clash of interests with Trippier and Martinelli, but they could still both haul in the same game. I know it sounds a bit contradictory and very unlikely, but it is possible, and I would expect some big things from some of these players, despite some tough games on paper. After a disappointing game week 18, I would still expect Harry Kane and Spurs to bounce back, and Crystal Palace got a crucial win against Bournemouth, but they still don't fill me with confidence, to be fair, and I think Spurs can get the victory here. And Harry Kane has done really well against Palace in the past. He's got a decent record against them. It's not the best, but it's still fairly decent, and there are games where he has absolutely gone ballistic against them, but more so in home matches, so that's something to think about. It's a London derby. Harry Kane's one yellow card away from suspension, so that is a big worry, and that is something to monitor ahead of the North London derby. But speaking of yellow card suspension risks, Mitrovic is another one, and he's going to be facing Leicester away and then Chelsea at home. So if he can go through that Leicester game without a booking, that would be great. I think he can score in both of these games and maybe get a double-digit return. He's probably the best captaincy option on paper, alongside Haaland, who's always the best, it seems. But with the double game week in mind, and with Haaland facing Chelsea, all the pressure Man City to get a result, I think Mitrovic could be the one here. Let me know your thoughts in terms of the best captaincy option in the comment section down below. I'd be very curious to see your opinions. The final player, of course, is Erling Haaland. You have to have him. Apart from Trippier, who I called essential, the only other player would be Erling Haaland, who I would call essential in FPL right now. And it's not something that I would try to recommend using that kind of term, because most of the time it's good to be different. But those two players right now are so consistent. They pretty much never blank, and the ownership is ridiculous. So not going with any of those players, I think, could be a really big dent to your season. So I would definitely recommend them, of course. It's kind of basic knowledge at this point. It's about the other players you feel when you're starting 11 and your 50-man squad. Let's now talk about my bench. So I've got Danny Ward in there as always. There's no chance he's going to start over Kepa Arrizabalaga this week. I've got Almiron first sub, which I'd be very worried about with these transfer plans. I'm very aggressive here, taking a -4 hit, going for Cucurella, Andres Pereira and Mitrovic for the likes of Joao Cancelo, Trossard and Greenwood. Let me know your thoughts on those transfers for a -4. Would you do that? The other players on my bench will be Ben White and Botman. So that's a very solid bench, but I could also see some points there, even from Danny Ward potentially. So that's going to be a bit tricky to kind of stomach. But now let's talk about the captaincy. I'm actually considering going for Mitrovic as my captain for the double game week, and that might seem a bit crazy, but I do believe he's the best captaincy option on paper, and it also enables us to go different from the typical Haaland captaincy. And I think the captaincy options in general will be very balanced. I put a poll out on my channel, and most of the options pretty much have a similar amount of voting, so around 25% for each one. So it does show it's very close compared to the usual 90% Haaland captaincy owners that we get, but I am considering going for Mitrovic as my captain. In terms of who else I'm considering, it's Marcus Rashford. Of course, Haaland is the standout from the single game week players, but Rashford at home to Bournemouth, I'm actually considering it. If I don't get Mitrovic in, I might go for Rashford in the end. It's between him and Haaland for the captaincy if I don't get Mitrovic in. And I also want to see your thoughts, of course, as always, but it's just something else to think about. I think Rashford is in my top 5 captaincy options, and it'll be interesting to see who ends up scoring the most this week. And finally, what I wanted to show you was another set of transfer plans. This includes only one transfer, so I'd roll the other one, and it's simply just doing Trossard to Odegaard. Despite some tough fixtures for Arsenal, the form Odegaard is in, it's so difficult to look past him. He offers incredible value. He's got more points than any other midfielder, with the exception of Almiron, and he's only 6.5 million still with 20% ownership. I mean, it's just so difficult to turn down. And what would I do if I went for Odegaard in for Trossard? In game week 20, I could potentially do Joao Cancelo to Akanji. After all, Akanji has been very nailed since joining Manchester City. I am still thinking about my other transfers though, because it depends on Cancelo starting against Chelsea or not. If he does, then I'd keep him for the double. If he doesn't, then of course I'll go ahead with that move and make a few others elsewhere too. But I'm going to be open-minded. I think this gives me a bit more flexibility. I could also consider something like Odegaard in for Trossard, also upgrade Greenwood all the way up to Mitrovic, and that would require Cancelo down to a cheaper defender, maybe someone like Bueno, for example, or a 4.7 million defender. But at the same time, I'm not too sure about that, because having 5 midfielders and 3 forwards, that just equates to benching headaches, team selection issues, and I'm probably going to have points on my bench most weeks, and I don't really want to have that, and I think that would be a bit too much squad depth for my liking. I'd rather have an extra defender, despite the lack of clean sheets, you could argue, across most of these matches since the restart. But that is my kind of alternative transfer plan. Just go for the informed player Odegaard, who is one of the very best players in the league right now, but if not, I can be very aggressive aggressive, target the doubles, go for someone like Cucurella in defence, and also 2 Fulham attackers in Andres Pereira and Mitrovic. Let me know your thoughts. And also, like I said, if I don't go for Mitrovic, you can see the captaincy here. I would consider Rashford. If not, I'll just go for Haaland and be very boring as always. But thank you very much for watching this video. I'd appreciate your thoughts and your feedback down in the comment section below. If you end up enjoying this, then be sure to drop it a like. Let's get this to over 300, and let's also look to push on towards 20,000 subscribers by the end of 2023. I think we can definitely do that. The growth has been simply incredible since the summer. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and you can also become a patron or a channel member. The link's on the description below. The same goes for the Discord server and the FPL League, and you'll find much more on the channel. So be sure to subscribe, hit notifications, and you won't miss a single upload or any of the great content we've got for you on all these social media platforms. I wish you all the best of luck for Game Week 19 and the rest of the season. Enjoy the festive period. It's still going on. I hope you have a great 2023, and I'll see you next time.